saw last 40. And we're some interesting.
40,000?
No, not yet, not yet. Quality, not quantity, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's now streaming live on YouTube. Let's see, just a second. We are live. Cool, yeah. Perfect, so we should start, right? Not to be very late. So everyone, thank you very much for this opportunity, for this gathering here. I think I know most of you in person. I don't know if you know each other, but it's a great opportunity as well. I'm starting a new project called Evolve, and Evolve is about helping companies expand internationally. I'm just going to do a 30-second pitch here for you guys. Very soon, I'm going to be delivering an ebook also on how to put people at this level together. So that's all I have to say. And the goal of our conversation today is to talk about the state of the digital. Initially I thought of digital commerce, but I think it's more enticing and more interesting to talk about digital transformation because everything is about commerce today, right? So I wanted to gather this gentlemen here. They are they're behind very interesting companies, and so the first thing we're going to do is to have a round of introductions. Then we're going to set the scene, talk about the state of digital transformation in Europe, their perception on how things are evolving due to COVID. Also, how companies are reacting. If some companies are being too slow on to react, or how, and that has a lot to do with leadership, in my opinion. We are going to talk about how do you perceive these movements because you're working with large and mid-sized companies, so it's interesting to have both perspectives. Then we're going to talk about survival and the challenges that you see on a daily basis. So, companies, are they still considering whether to go digital or not? Is this still a consideration? Because a lot of boards and decision makers, they probably were procrastinating a lot of the decisions on to go digital, and now I think it's the only alternative. And I can talk like from my family. My dad had to completely pivot his business model. It was interesting, so it's on survival mode. Quite interesting example also from my home. So yeah, to talk about how COVID has changed the perception of the C-level. I want to hear from you guys who's going to win and the role of leadership today. And then we're gonna finish off talking about emerging trends. Yeah, picking your brain on that, and then we open up for a Q&A session. All right? So should I democratically say who's gonna start, or someone's gonna be a volunteer?
I can volunteer.
All right.
There you go. We have one.
If you feel better with this. Hi, my name is Karwartka. I am CEO of Divante. Divante is an e-commerce technology company. We build technologies. We have our own products, and we also implement some more complex projects. We work with large clients in Europe, Asia, and States.
Cool.
So maybe Tomek after Tomasz. I'm Tomek, founder and CEO of Omnipack. We're a full stack fulfillment for SMEs. What it means in a nutshell is that we enable merchants to deliver Amazon-grade customer experience, regardless of their scale, and also without them having to invest into logistics. Why full stack? Because we actually run our own warehouses, so the physical operation, and we develop our proprietary technology to take care of all the data flows in the process.
Perfect.
I can continue. My name is Frederik. I'm CEO and co-founder of Magazino. We build robots for warehouses. So you can see one of those robots behind me. So mobile manipulating robots, which are running in the real world, picking, for example, shoe boxes from shelves, bringing to the front, and also taking care of the returns. And they work parallel to humans. So humans do their job and the robots works next to them. Compared to a lot of competitors, we do pick the item with the robot. So a lot of competitors build AGVs where the human then picks a box and puts it onto that robot, and our robot really does the picking, so picks from a shelf, brings it somewhere, or returns the piece into the shelf.
Hi, my name is Asfar Towheed. I'm working as an interim CEO for Lot Art. Lot Art is an investment company encouraging investment in midsection art and luxury goods. It's not for just buying for decoration. We are encouraging people to use luxury and items and art as an investment strategy, and we bring value of what the art is in a long term and a short term as well. So that's what we do at Lot Art. And digital is our business. Yeah, short.
Perfect.
So that means I'm the next one, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Great. So I'm Valentin Radu. I'm the CEO and founder of Omniconvert. We are empowering e-commerce companies from various countries to improve their customer experience by using our data and our experts. What we understood in the last few years is that customer journey optimization is way underrated than it should be. And all the initiatives should take into account how customers are perceiving their companies. And I think e-commerce is a lot about human connections and fulfilling the needs, because nobody actually cares about our companies over here. All they care about and all we care about as consumers and customers is fulfilling our needs or desires.
Very nice. So we get started. So let's then talk about the state of digital transformation in Europe. And in order to talk about the state of digital transformation in Europe, I like you guys to see how companies are reacting, right? What's your impression after, pre-COVID and now during the crisis? We don't know when things are going to. Well, in Denmark, schools are opening up, but still, like, you still have restrictions on like shops. I was out now for a coffee. Some shops you're just allowed to have 7 people inside a shop, and I like to have your take, guys, on how do you see the state first of digital transformation and how companies are reacting to all of this. And let's make of this like a conversation, where we can interrupt each other, and I'll take care of time as well. Make it more like a friendly meeting.
Hi, so happy to start. I think, like, in general, I think there is no doubt about the fact that COVID will accelerate some of the trends. So when you look at the digital transformation, I mean, topics like omnichannel have been on the agenda for quite a while. And many of the traditional retailers already realized e-commerce is not something that they can neglect. But right now, I mean, last couple of months really proved the importance of having the e-commerce channel. So, I mean, that's just going to accelerate. So this is something that would have happened anyway, I guess. Maybe it would take 5 or 10 years. Now I think it's going to be 1 or 2 years. So like I guess the famous example that everybody who's on LinkedIn already read is Primark without any e-commerce, a channel that basically saw their sales dropping to 0. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at those companies that have already invested a lot, I mean, the sales decrease there was manageable. So I think it's all about really accelerating the trends and really, consumers having the opportunity to test out a bit more than they would typically do, grocery e-commerce, just as an example. So a lot of change ahead of us, not anything unexpected, but really much faster.
What I would add here is e-commerce doubled, you know, in 1.5 months. So we needed like 15 years to went from 0 to 10%, and now we are at 20-30% after 1 month, and probably, you know, we will stay at this level. So this will change a lot, and I think there's a lot of winners in every category, and probably a lot of people try to buy new things online, right? Like a grocery is a great example. People were afraid of that, try it, and my estimation would be like at least half of them will stay. So it will be the pie will be much bigger. And my question is, I'm really interested what will happen with marketing, because the marketing, the online marketing looks like a new rent right now, and I am just wondering, is the price of, you know, online ads skyrocket too, because there's nothing more, only online now, and will it also, you know, stay at the new higher level, because this could change a lot in P&Ls of D2C brands, for example, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's also the perfect hook for Valentin to talk about retention and his experience as well.
I was thinking about you asking these questions.
Yeah. From my understanding, there are two types of companies being affected right now. The ones which are having demand almost zero, and the ones which are having demand almost doubling and more than that. From what we've seen on our customers, the ones that are surprised about this demand are fully focused on their operations, because they've always postponed, even though they've got this allocation of online channels. For most of the bigger companies which are having their demand in groceries or in these verticals of essential products, they are surprised about this, and they don't simply care about marketing anymore. It's all a matter of operations, right? In customer journey, fulfillment, supply, and so on. While the other ones which are having demand almost zero, they simply don't know how to cope with this new reality, and they go directly on cutting the costs by anything which is not related with the current health of their organization. From my understanding, marketing is going to be transformed, because that also means, as all the buyers are now affected emotionally about the current conditions, companies should not pretend that nothing is going on. So they need to come up with a voice. If until then they were just moving boxes from A to B, now they need to have a personality, they need to have a voice, and they need to relate to the current conditions. And that's why marketing, I think, it will have to be much more human. And on the other hand, I think this demand that you are talking about, Thomas, is going to fall. I mean, it's not going to stay like this in the next 2-3 months. Things will go down, but for sure, the habit of buying online, it will stick to some of the customers, and that means the e-commerce penetration will be higher. So from my understanding, the current conditions are not clear for no one, because let's not pretend that we are in a bubble and we're not going to be affected about the current economics. Here in Romania, we have unemployment rate got to the roof. So now we have around 18% unemployment. And there are a lot of people which are not going to have jobs. And let's not forget that the hype of consumption that we are all riding now is going to deflate. So people will simply realize that in the last 10 years, they haven't got their economies right. So they've spent all the money on trips, on cars, on buying cheap homes that now are like half of the price. So they will be much more, let's say, careful on how they are spending their money. So I'm a bit reluctant on the on the growth, even though the e-commerce will stick and will be one of the winners in this game in 2, 3, 4 years from now. If we're gonna fix the health, the medical situation, the economy is gonna get back, and the digital players, the ones that have transformed themselves with this occasion, will be the winners.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I just want to add, I'm coming from a very different angle. So we do talk about commerce. There is no debate that e-commerce has literally boomed up in this short time, and possibly it will not be sustained the same level once this whole COVID is passed through, but it will be at some high level. I'm coming from a different angle, from an operation, from an enterprise, or from an internal inside outlook. So for a company to consider digital transformation, they have to think about what are they trying to do in the digital transformation, in the transformation. Do they want to improve customer intimacy? Do they want to improve operational excellence internally in the organization, or somehow they need all this combination to have a product leadership? So it's one of the challenges that comes out when you are working remotely is, how do you encourage customer intimacy? What is the feedback loop with your customer, and how do you sustain that? Because in a physical shop, you get a feedback loop. If you have a sales guys running to your B2B customer, you get a feedback loop. How do you do that in a digital platform if this is a bit of a new normal in some ways? And the other layer which I have seen talking to other people in an organization is, there is a challenge with operational excellence, because suddenly you're working remotely. You're using Skype for business, Teams, Slack, Zoom is the new king, and the Google stuff. But what about document management? So a company, there is a very big electrical company, may or may not be named Schneider. The challenge is, how do you go on document management? How do your employees access all the document to just do your job? So a company like that, which is not a traditional e-commerce engine, how do they evolve in a transformation coming out of this? And somebody had mentioned earlier that anybody who has been just talking about it and it has been very slow in the transformation, this is going to get a bit of an aggressive push to be very, very serious about it. There would be a serious look into, how do we do simple document management? How do we give our employees access to information when they work remotely, and full access? So that's a thought. I'm just going to leave it at that and get your reaction.
But I think there's a big difference on, I think, how far the company already was before Corona, right? So I think all the startups were used to work with, I don't know, SharePoint or Google Docs, and used Confluence and Jira to organize themselves. And then the transformation from being in the office to being at home was done in a few hours, and everything worked, right? And then you talk about the large conglomerates, which really had difficulties changing. And I know of some big Munich companies, they didn't have enough VPN connections, or they didn't have enough laptops for their employees, right? And suddenly they were just not able to transform that fast. And that's definitely something which got accelerated through the crisis, but definitely also of how you work and how you prepared beforehand.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting and really well said. And then we get to the point, because you're talking about the digital natives, whether you're startups or not, and the laggards, right? So how do you see the laggards now? You know, those companies who've been procrastinating the projects, digital projects, and moving forward. How do you see them? Are they still very romantic about this or not? You know, because I think the boards, they used to be, no, we can do this in 3 years' time or 2 years' time. The digital natives, like all of you guys here, you're digital natives, no problems with documentation, anything like that. But when we go to a more traditional organization that might have some digital processes already in place, but not everything, then, you know, what's there? I'd like to have your take on that.
I just heard a really funny story about that. It's just like a funny story. So one of the large grocery chains was asking about, rapid digitalization. We need to digitize our business. We need to build an e-commerce. And you know what? Let's start from a physical meeting to discuss that. Hey guys, but maybe it's not the best idea. Maybe it's not so safe. No. We know that there is a risk in that, but digitalization is so important. We need to take this risk. So some people are still in this mode, like let's pretend we are digital. But I think those companies will struggle, and I think it's not only about this situation right now, but the wave will get back to us probably this autumn, right? And we'll have this again and again and again. So it's not like if you somehow survive being totally offline this wave, you are safe. You are not safe. Yeah.
But I can add a story to this. Once somebody asked us to send him some information about digital products and about robots, and then he's asked us to fax it to him.
Really?
So if you ask for digitalization information and then requested it to be sent as a telefax, that's like the complete ridiculously.
Frederik, I think this is the norm, because I had a conversation with the chief innovation officer from a large grocery chain in the UK, and I was curious to know what was his biggest concern, and that was his biggest concern, because all the orders from their suppliers are coming through fax in 2020. So. Seriously? That's how this world is right now. We are all sitting in our bubbles, thinking that we have robots and whatever, but on the other end we have laggards, which are really successful if you look at their numbers, that are still struggling with fax.
I mean, I think it really comes down to the sense of urgency. Looking at different businesses, right? Because it's a little bit like with going to a gym or training. Like everybody knows it's healthy and it's good for you, but then most of the people decide to do that just before summer, like a month before summer. So I think it's in a way it's similar in business, because I think like everybody knows, like theoretically digitalization is important, e-commerce is important, innovation is important. But at the end of the day, there is a strategic planning session, and all the priorities are put on the table. And then turns out there is a couple of fires here or there, and then there is this other project. So I think it's really, again, looking at last 5 years, 10 years, it's that the change I think was there, but it was just slow because the sense of urgency wasn't there, right? So I mean, e-commerce, if it's between 5 and 10%, and then maybe it grows to 12 or 15, you still have 85% of your business offline. So you feel comfortable, like, okay, I mean, that's still the biggest share of the pie. So I think like the current situation is going to be a big push. So the sense of urgency will definitely increase. And actually, I mean, so I like over the last few weeks, I had actually many conversations with the traditional retailers who, we were in touch for a year or two, and then they come back and say, listen, yeah, let's just quickly, get the discussions back on track. And as in life, some of them will, after this initial knee-jerk reaction, after a month, they will forget about the topic, but some of them will push it. Yeah. And then, as Tomasz mentioned, I mean, let's see, the autumn's gonna come. Let's see if the virus is gonna be back or not. And some of the people will be prepared, some of the businesses will be prepared, some not much so. So I think it's really about urgency and sort of taking this seriously.
And I think we have to be honest that some of the digital projects just didn't have the paybacks which they expected to be in short or midterm, right? So sometimes it was just only the first step they had to do, and then they didn't do the next steps because they didn't benefit enough from the first steps they took. And I think it's the combination that digital by itself doesn't bring value, but you have to build it into something bigger and maybe change more of your company to have something out of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. We even have this checklist. Are we sure this project is successful, like internally, if someone is approaching us? And one of the ticks is management board is involved. So if there is no management board, they are not interested in digitalization. Come on, it's not a digitalization. Then it's usually just a pet project of marketing department or something like this, and it's not gonna fly. Just you just build a system or something, right? And no one will use it because you need to change a lot of processes. You need to change P&L, budgeting, like you need to change the company, right? That's the digitalization is about.
It affects culture as well. You're right.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go back to what Frederik was saying earlier, because you made a very valid point, you guys, about value creation. A lot of digital projects from an internal organization perspective, they don't get moved because people don't see value. I know companies which were like, Exchange server in our own data center is fine. I don't want to go to cloud. And now they were stuck because it was not working there to physically send somebody to a data center to do something about it. So there are many of those projects, and you guys are right. It has to be a collective good. And one of the collective good that is coming up is operational efficiency is one of those topics, because the e-commerce one is more or less straightforward. You make money off it. But if you are not a company which is into an e-commerce, you're not in that space, because B2B is still thinking about it. What do you do with digital transformation? You need to have a great digital presence, of course, web and all those things. And you guys are right. They need to accelerate it to make it a little bit better, make it more interactive. However, it keeps coming back to what are the other things that doesn't make sense to do in digital transformation, which we should do. And the list is, of course, is bigger. And yeah, you guys are right. It has to be part of a collective program, and we have to block it as whatever the name it is. And I just keep coming to the same name: efficiency, operational excellence, and things like that. So I keep highlighting these other sections so that we don't get tunnel vision on e-commerce, because e-commerce is, for me, even though it is complicated for some people, but it is straightforward. You make a digital presence, you buy it online, there is a service, and there is a whole stack, as we call, to support it. However, there is a whole bunch of other things which people are struggling with. There is a company in south of Holland, and they have three different document management systems. The reason I brought it up, because it came to me recently about it as a discussion. So now there's only two of them they can access externally, but the core database, which the legal team needs to access, has to be physically in the company, because it has an air gap and you can't access it, and things like that. So just leaving it to that point.
I have something to add here, because I think it's important to understand the dimension of the companies that we are talking about, because there are various dimensions of companies. We have the huge enterprise companies which are getting into the online and not, but they are just dipping their toes into the online channels, because as you've said, the online is not that important for them. But we also have some examples like Thomas Cook, if you remember that. So they've seen Skyscanner and Booking.com skyrocketing since 2010. They've got all the data at their disposal, but they couldn't turn around the company, even though they've invested towards digital transformation. So they weren't too big to fall, because they haven't started properly. And of course, the mindset of the company is the first one to be transformed. So if you have a company which is 170 years old, like Thomas Cook, it looks like they couldn't adapt to the customer. But also we have smaller companies which are really fast, and they've made the cut besides the pure players. And let's leave the pure players and the DNVBs, for instance, aside, because these are as Carlos said, digital native companies, which started already by gathering data, having fast feedback loops with their customers, and crafting customer journeys which are really, really short, and delivering happiness, because that's what Zappos has taught us for 10 years already, right? But the issue right now that I'm seeing at these companies facing is they are all suddenly looking at their online channels, and they simply don't know how to do it rapidly, because their mindset was towards traditional way of thinking, right? Project management was different, the ROI was different, and on the online you could measure everything. Imagine that what we are doing is we allow online retailers to track all their customers, and for them is stunning to be aware that they could actually see the customer behavior and all the purchases from real customers, because what they were doing previously, they were blasting products to masses of unknown customers. And in order to transform this, before the digital transformation is the mindset. And if the decision makers are not transforming themselves, even though they have the urgency that you, Tomek, talk about, they're not going to be able to adapt to this new environment.
Perfect. And I think that is, sorry, go on.
No, I think that this is a good point, and I would add one more, because ultimately, one is the urgency. The second is sort of understanding what's actually available, but also the third one is the willingness to disrupt yourself. And again, this one, I mean, it might sound easy, like this is the thing you should do, but where I see the offline players struggling is then to figure out how they want to manage the channel. So how they want to manage pricing, or how they want to manage commissions and KPIs, because this is a simple question for a retailer who fully owns the product and the distribution, so they sell through own stores. But once you have a franchise network or commission-based salespeople, it's getting a little bit more complicated. So this is this willingness to say, I mean, this is still day one of our business, and we should be willing to just disrupt something that's working right now, but in order to build something new.
And maybe let me add one more point. The interesting part is that everything we talk about at the moment is B2C, right? I think the transformation in B2B sales and B2B customer connection is going to be even more intense during that time, because that's something what they didn't have and didn't need to have for a long time, especially when it comes to components or machineries or something. And now suddenly you can't access the customer anymore. You can call them, but so there has to be a transformation, which might even be faster in the B2B world than in the B2C.
Very nice.
Yes.
What I wanted to ask. Go on. No, go on. No, it's good.
I like what Frederik is saying on the B2B, because we do talk about B2C. There is going to be a push on B2B side as well. And there is a challenge, because that is a very brick and mortar company. And so there has been a conversation around B2B, but again, one of those things which has been lagging behind in innovation and catching up. So I agree with you, Frederik. We'll see an increase in a B2B adoption by big companies as well, especially if they're shipping physical stuff and customer contacts. Yeah.
It wasn't that question, but since we were talking about this, do you see B2B companies also doing commerce and going direct to consumer and skipping the middleman and doing both?
Yeah, this is something which is close to my heart. So we see two things. One is, of course, now all B2B companies are thinking about doing e-commerce. E-commerce is quite complex challenge if you are a B2B company, because usually you have very different pricing per client. You have a CRM, you have a very complex promotion systems, you have ERP and a lot of other systems, and you need to integrate everything. Because if your e-commerce is delivering offer which is just not as good as offer which was delivered by sales guy, you will never use this e-commerce system, right? So it's very complex problem to solve. So one thing is they're investing, but it's hard to say that those projects are quick wins projects. It's not this type of the project. You need to invest several years. Then you need to think about how to onboard clients, and you need to be very serious about it. And probably you need to change your logistical systems too. So it's complex. We see that there's also one component, one additional component here. So usually you have a lot of sales reps in place, and we saw that those sales reps, they see the e-commerce system as a as an enemy, right? This system is taking my job, right? So like this week we introduced a product that is allowing sales guys to have a call, like Zoom call, and show product catalog and take some orders. And we see this is like very, very needed functionality, which is now it's so obvious. It wasn't at the beginning, that those guys, they still need to talk with the client, describe the offer, talk about the price, but then e-commerce itself is a great tool to make an order. So we think we will see more and more online, offline mixture here, and probably sales guys will be the best onboarding like machine to educate clients about the power of e-commerce. So I think only when you think about synergy of your current sales reps and e-commerce itself, then you will be successful, and only in this case.
And maybe
guys, what do you think?
What you can add is that the B2B world can learn a lot from e-commerce, right? When you think about marketing automation, like if you register on a vendor of components nowadays, they usually don't categorize it. They don't have a customer journey. You don't get emails and responses. You're not called automatically, right? You might end up in an email newsletter database, and that's it. And so a lot what the B2C world in e-commerce has thought for can be transferred to the B2B world, but it's only happening now as they kind of lose, at the moment they're forced to, or they can't access the customers, they can't send the sales reps there. And so they come up with new ideas. And I think this is something which can take off and which a lot of companies are not doing yet.
And by the way, I think in some cases for B2B, the transformation might be even easier, because you can actually imagine going all into e-commerce. So there is this example of a company in Poland. Actually, they were selling like professional building supplies, things like power drills and so on. And like 5-10 years ago, they had like 50 locations across Poland. Not like premium location, but then the building teams, they would just drive there and buy it. And then they decided they're just going to go 100% e-commerce. So they shut down all of those physical locations. And turned out, of course, they were a little bit afraid of how it's going to turn out. But then, turns out it's actually even more convenient that those building teams could just make an order, and next day it's there, and it actually is delivered to the construction site. So I think in B2B you have more cases where the value of the order makes it worthwhile, that you can have dedicated sales reps. They might visit the customer, they might help with the purchase, but you don't have to have a retail outlet, right? For fashion, just going 100% e-commerce. If this is an established fashion brand, that sounds really that would be a very courageous step. For B2B, I can imagine more cases like that.
Perfect. So let's talk about survival now. And I think that has a lot to do with how companies, what is it that they have to do to survive? I think that's the first priority here, right? And I was, when we kicked off this conversation, Like my dad, he's producing dress shirts in Brazil. He's employing 200 people. All of a sudden, the Brazilian government said, you know, we're shutting everything. Companies are shutting. And he has his own shops where he's selling. It's like his sales channel. So he's also providing shirts like B2B, but also selling through his own channels. So what he started doing in order to survive were masks. So he managed to somehow to pivot all his strategy to start producing masks, and that's the. I mean, we were like having a good laugh the other day about it, because we said, Dad, you're gonna survive. You're like a cockroach, you know. And he said, yeah, I'm gonna go through this, but it's really hard, you know. And that's I think the first thing that I think I'd love to address in this conversation is survival, right? How are you guys seeing companies maybe pivoting their business models or dealing with the fact that they have to survive, whether it's to go digital or to improve their digital capabilities? Survival, guys.
Yeah, we want.
I'll go with my take regarding the survival. What I've been able to see, and this was especially in the US, was that companies started to sell vouchers, for instance, for the future. Other companies made Cotopaxi. That's a company which is selling sport apparel. They've got a 2 weeks drop in their sales, and they've built something called Festival. So mainly they've made a festival of people that were doing treasure hunt online with teams. So mainly they've built their community around a single idea. So they've made it so that they've engaged their customers which were staying home. They couldn't go out to buy tents or whatever they were selling previously. So there are some creative ways to pivot around something. So, and it's not everything around selling I don't know, sanitizer and masks and so on. On the other end, as we are seeing something, we are all admiring companies like Uber and Airbnb, and they have the headlines everywhere, but that's capitalism, right? So in order to survive, they've just got 14% of their workforce, thousands of jobs smashed away, right? So we're in this system where the companies that we're all admiring are in the business game, and the individuals are going to be affected. So what is the survival, and what I think is going to be interesting from a macro view is the survival of the capitalism itself. Because if this let's say the long tail of the workforce, we are seeing here, it's 18%. In the United States, it was a graph, right? In 2008, they got 1 million people applying for
unemployment.
For unemployment. And now was in March 2020, 7 million. So that was quite a difference, and it's growing as well. So I think the system itself is going to be challenged about this crisis, because if this is going to be much more intense, and we are seeing also in Spain, they have this universal basic income concept, so that they are not seeing riots on the streets, they are not seeing people revolting, and they are not seeing the people actually getting out of their way to get the basics that they need. So what we are talking about is the survival of the economic players, which are social constructs. At the end of the day, there are organizations which are built around ideas and needs for individuals, or the survival of the capitalism itself as a system that is going to be challenged. That's my take on this matter, on the survival topic.
Yeah, and just to build on that, because I think, you know, the whole survival of capitalism topic is quite interesting. I personally think it's going to survive, but what I do expect is actually that the attitudes of consumers are going to change. So, you know, as someone told me, like, you know, they realized after 6 weeks of walking in those same dress, trousers, and t-shirts, like, I mean, we don't need that many clothes typically. Like, that's one way to look at it. So of course, once we start going out to pubs, we might have to buy some, but maybe the baseline is just gonna go a little bit lower. So I think ultimately, whichever industry you're in, like right now, reducing your fixed cost is something that's gonna make you a bit more resilient. So like, depending on what's gonna happen, you know, you will have some flexibility. And second point is actually, I think, you know, flexibility and really just acting fast is super important in those times. So at Omnipack, we're actually serving like many different categories. So we have a first-hand experience. We see like which categories have been really impacted, which boomed. So of course, some of the categories are completely down to zero, and then there is not much you can do. Like, you know, party supplies, who's organizing parties right now, right? It's really a really tough market. But then, as an example, we have a couple of merchants who are omni-channel, so they have both online and a few showrooms, and in some of the cases they decided to really take all the stock from the showroom back to the central warehouse, to our warehouse, and then offer it in the online. And it turned out to be a very good move. Like, you know, much higher stock availability. Then you play around a little bit with promotion, and, you know, turns out you don't feel that much the lockdown effect. So I think it's a lot about just being flexible and reacting fast to the situation. Again, the benefit of omni-channel, and just, you know, someday we might wake up in a situation when internet is down for a week. And again, those who have offline will say, you know, it makes sense to have offline as well. So flexibility.
I hope that doesn't happen at the same time, Corona and internet being down. I think then we would really have a problem. But what are you guys doing, like, for yourself in your companies? I would be interested in. For example, we in former times we were always able to visit our existing customer warehouses, but as they are locking it down for safety, we now, for example, do online virtual tours to warehouses, or we have planned a roadshow where we take our robot and go into the warehouse directly and show it in their warehouses when we allowed. So we kind of pivoted, or not pivoted, but changed our marketing and sales channels as well. Did you change something in your business?
I can just give 2 cents from our side, because we are in a business which is art and gallery, and people visiting. The way it works is people go and have a lot of foot traffic in galleries, and they like a certain painter. Then they go say, you know what, I like this painting. I want to see if that is available in the market. We lost that, energy coming from the galleries. However, the shift has been is that we have encouraged galleries to come back and list with us, you know, for free. Again, it's a business thing. And we started encouraging people to have more and more online presence of their art from the galleries and art collectors. And we saw that within few weeks, the number of hits on a site has gone up, because people are spending apparently in the pajamas buying more online luxury goods and art, apparently, or at least visiting the website. So from our perspective, we started encouraging we call the producers, because it's a platform, uh, art collectors, galleries, auctioneers, to go on a site and put more and more stuff. So there was suddenly that kind of awakening. Let's do that. We were talking to, and still talking to, some antique dealers out of Germany, because they are the most antiquated thinkers on digital presses, to list their products online. So it's in a summary, I would say there's a great education going on from our side in a market predominantly doesn't believe a lot in digital presence. So we are saying let's educate people. Even if we get 50% of that online, it's a success for us.
Awesome.
I
Anyone
also
else?
have, I have something to show you guys. If you're okay with this, Carlos, I can share a bit of my screen, because I've been doing some research over the previous downturns and what kind of strategies the previous companies had in order to survive. It's an interesting research by a Harvard Business School professor. So if you agree, I can share my screen with you for, I don't know, 3-4 minutes.
Sure, let's go.
All in favor? Okay, so
we have a cool board here.
Yeah, let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so there were 4 types of companies and 4 types of strategies that were let's say selected by the companies in the previous downturn. The first one was the prevention. So those companies had the focus on cost cutting. So every decision was viewed through the lens of minimizing the costs. So they tried to do the same with less, lowering the quality and customer satisfaction as well. The second type was promotion companies. So they were pushing really hard on promoting their company despite the gravity of the conditions. So these companies added more features when companies were looking for greater value for the same price. Another strategy was the pragmatic strategy. So that was a combination between prevention and promotion. So then, so that means in reducing the number of employees and cutting the costs while they were also going out there to promote their services. And the progressive tactic or strategy, let's say, because it's a set of tactics. So these companies balanced correctly the prevention and promotion by evaluating and being data driven. So researching every aspect of their companies and reducing the costs instead of from the near term. They've used their workforce so that they can adapt to the new conditions, and that's the outcome. So that's the best combination of moves, right? So we have, on one end, we have the employee reduction, the operational efficiency, or both. And for the promotion focused movement were market development or asset investment. So as you can see here, the best outcome was for companies that were doing operational efficiency, not employee reduction, and market development and asset investment. So those 3 in the previous downturn were the best. And if we want to see also the sales and profits, the progressive companies, as you could see here, the sales for the progressive companies were the best in 3 years after the downturn. So mainly that's what I wanted to show to you. I think it's interesting to understand this from the point of view of from the point of view of how what kind of strategy to approach.
I think that's really interesting, Valentin, if I may jump in here, because I think that says 2 things to me. First, the role of leadership today in companies. So the role of leadership, and then, yeah, I like to have your take also on who's going to win this, because, so for example, and yeah, I think if there's no way, then obviously you're going to have to lay off people. Like today, I think Airbnb just announced that they're laying off 2,000 employees, right? 2K. But the role of leadership in this mess that we are living now, I think it says a lot what you just showed. So leadership that are progressive, that are not laying off, that are somewhat investing in marketing and sales. Probably the community as well, making people feel safe, right? So taking care of their employees. What's your take, guys?
I can just add that also analyzed the same data, came to more or less same conclusions. So we as a company try to be as progressive as possible. We also choose not to, have any layoffs, and instead invest in new products. And for sure, there's a lot of opportunities on the market right now, but to embrace those opportunities, your people need to feel more or less safe, right? To be able to think openly about those opportunities. So I think that's the true challenge for all of us, for all leaders. And I'm really like thinking about it all the time. Also a little bit, concern about how I act. What should I do? This is also, interesting time for me to check my leadership skills in a practice because you can learn things like this on HBR courses. There's no book about it, right? It's live.
Yeah.
So I'm also very, very curious about how you feel, guys, with this situation, and what you see.
I'll throw in some words here. Is I, first of all those leadership people who are uh, not connecting with employees, I think you guys, they need to find a way to connect with the employees and show empathy in these challenging times. It is really, really key, because in these times, company want to know, not just to save a job, that hey, the guys at the top care for us beyond just money and compensations. Um, Other than that, in a leadership, and this is a conclusion of what we have been talking about as well, is, and I'm going to take that point that Frederik mentioned, that the leadership would also be to stand up and defend and do those projects and those programs which may not have a direct ROI, but it's for the greater good of the company, and they need to stand up and defend that in front of the board and the powers to be, because sometimes ROI may not be money. I know ROI could just be future ready, and in some different format as well. Simple example is to go forward and say, you know what, we want to spend. I have seen working in enterprise, and you guys must have seen as well, is nobody wants to spend time on improving email communication or collaboration platform and document management or anything like that. The digitally suave companies, they do that. Of course, they're all very well settled. But what about the other companies? So that I think there would be those leaders who will recognize that we need to do all these iterative projects just to survive and be progressive. I think there would be some conversation on that for sure. And then the second thing I do believe, it's a statement and a question to the group, is with these layoffs coming up and some changes on how we can approach the world, some jobs will go because of layoffs, but new opportunities will arise as well. So let's not forget that there are new opportunities coming in. And so my question to the panel is, what do you think those new opportunities and new roles would be for somebody who wants to do a career shift or reskilling? Let me know.
I have to disagree with Thomas. I've learned a lot from Harvard Business School, but I haven't learned anything about the emotional, about controlling my emotions from those books. So the concepts are there, but I agree with you, it's really hard to actually apply them when you have to let people go or when you have to give bad news to your team. And I will always remember these moments when we were all disconnected, and 35 people we had instantly to work from our homes. And I will recall some of the first meetings via Google Hangout with 30 something people, and I was taking a walk in the forest near my house, and I was the lucky one, and I had to cheer them up, and I had to give them hope, and I had to keep their moods up, because we had people that got depressed by staying home with no friends, because they had the work was all they were doing, and suddenly they couldn't even go out and meet their colleagues. So it was there were some challenges, and hopefully these are going to become a memory, or when that made us stronger. But if they would have to answer your question, as far from my perception, these times that we are living right now are times when, if we are doing twice the effort, and I'm working like crazy here. So I'm in this room with the cat. My kids are there. They are doing homeschooling. I'm going there. They are asking for stuff. My wife, she's cooking. I'm saying her, stop the vacuum cleaner because you're making noise. And I'm here in this conference. So it's a total mess for everyone. And I'm working like I don't know, like a horse, 14 hours a day. But the rewards are the same. So mainly, I think this is happening for all of us, because people are reluctant to get to new projects, to buy new stuff and whatever. If you are not selling masks like Carlos' father, these days you do much of the work, more of the work with the same rewards. So if you are laid off as an individual, this is the time to read a book. For me was fantastic, Who Stole My Cheese, right? I don't know if you've read it, but it's fantastic. So the environment has changed. You have to change as well. You have to over deliver, because money, if you are running out of money, that means you're not providing value anymore to the society. And you have to think, how can I provide value? Because money are coming like a shadow after the value that you provide. So money is actually something that people are paying you for future actions or for future benefits that they will get from you. So it's a credit. Money is not real for money, right? So it's something for the future. So if you are not promising something valuable, and if you are not delivering value, you're going to be left out, because that's what this environment is proposing us all as a society.
And I think the crisis has some positive impact in terms of how people look at some jobs, right? So, for example, the appreciation of people working in the healthcare or working with elderly. So there are positive changes out of this for some jobs which were maybe beforehand not paid enough, or in difficult circumstances. And I think even to some extent it's healthy for us as an employer, because we had the experience that in Munich there's a lot of larger companies, and income was just skyrocketing, and it was more and more difficult to compete as a startup, and people could choose whatever job they want to have, and the ideas of how a job should look like, with 8 hours of work, free lunch, a lot of days of holidays, etc. That was to some extent also an extreme. And maybe it's wiggling itself healthy to some extent. Of course, there are very downturns, and there are critical situations for some of them. But in the countries where there is a social system in place, I think we'll pick up from there.
And just to build a little bit on what Valentin said, so I would say I disagree a little bit, because I think with this level of change, because COVID is something that is really hard to predict. I can imagine people who are actually delivering a lot of value, but it's just the fact that there is no way for them to do that in the same way they used to do it. So I think it's not so black or white, but actually two thoughts to build on that. So first of all, because you, Carlos, you asked about leadership. So I think, and this is I think a quote from Jeff Bezos. After somebody congratulated him after a great quarter, and he said, "You shouldn't congratulate me now, because we worked a couple of quarters ago for this quarter." And I think part of leadership is exactly planning, and planning in a way to minimize the risk of being in a situation like that. Because if you have to lay people off, I mean, you have to do that, and you have to be very empathetic about that. But the question is, okay, could that have been avoided? And recently I read about someone said in Scandinavia there is a little bit different school of thought in terms of capitalism, and that one of the big thesis there is that the goal of the company is to survive, not to maximize profit, which, I mean, it still means the company needs to be profitable, because in order to survive, you have to be profitable. And I think it's like just looking at the past 11 years of bull market, there might be a little bit too little of leadership in that respect. So everyone's saying, okay, I mean, it's going to be a bull's market forever, so let's not think about risks and some safety cushions. So I think this is sort of one aspect of leadership. But even if you're caught in a very difficult situation, I think the second aspect is, again, flexibility and just really pushing to adjust to the situation. So very personal example experience for me. I mean, personal in a sense, something I daily interact with right now is restaurants and how they reacted to the situation. Because like when you go on the street, you see some restaurants completely closed, and very likely they will never reopen. But others, they actually doubled down on delivery options. So, you know, visible in all those food apps. And even like one I'm using right now, it was a traditional restaurant, but then they figured out they would offer lunches. Like if you subscribe for a full week, you get a very good price, but then they get predictability and stability. So I think this is, again, a great example of leadership, because I imagine the manager of that restaurant who just, you know, figured out what to do just to keep the people busy, because I imagine with those lunches, they are not making great profit, but at least they're providing jobs. So two thoughts on leadership.
And I like to take that and ask you about who's going to survive as in brands, because if capitalism is in check now, I think we are also going to look differently at consumption, in my opinion, and especially looking at my my children now. I don't think they're gonna forget easily about COVID and how that sucked. So, and I think there's a generation, you know, with Greta's and the youngsters really, who are more critical about what's going on. And I like to have your take on brands and survival, or the brands who are going to win, since we're talking about leadership, empathy, yeah, and all these topics.
I think it was coming. We saw that things will change, but I think we all assume that will take years. And I think, for example, about fast fashion, right? So at the beginning of this year, we saw, you know, the fast fashion conglomerates are in deeper and deeper troubles. People are not interested so much. And I was thinking, okay, probably there will be some space for new brands, maybe D2C brands, which will be much better connected with the young generation and more sustainable. And now I think everything will happen much faster. And I'm also curious about your thoughts on what will happen. Do we see like a lot of large retail brands just disappearing? And do we see a free space? And will we see new players there? And what kind of players will we see? Or maybe there will be, like, you know, PE funds trying to rescue the big boys, and the big boys will stay with us, and they will have another 10 years to change their business model. This is really, really interesting, also from the perspective of new brands. And someone at the chat was asking about it, right? Like, what could the strategy be if you are a new fashion brand, if you are starting right now? So yeah, really, really interested on that.
I think there would be quite a bit of merger and acquisitions coming up, coming out of it, and there is already a lot of those conversations going on for brand, because the bigger the brand, bigger is their goodwill in the market, bigger is the value. Possibly somebody else can create the same kind of a cloth, but they can't push it on the market. So there would be some mergers and acquisition for sure. If you look at the fashion industry and stuff like that, in the consumer, there would also. I'm not an economist, but being a very theoretical economist, reading whatever I can, is I think there is a resetting of markets as a part of capitalism resetting itself. There's a resetting of labor market as well. Coming out of it, there would be definitely new opportunities. I'm always an optimistic about that. That there would be new opportunities. There would be different variations of e-commerce that we have not seen yet that will come out of it. We have seen certain versions of it, how they do the product, how they book the product together to bring it to the customer. I think there would be new value creation in the product category to keep the customer happy and attract the customer, and the value proposition as well. So yeah, I think there would be a change. One of the ways to look at, not the same but somewhat, is how Brexit, being whatever the political situation, it is what it is. There are challenges as well as opportunities that's going to come up in UK and the European side to sort that Brexit thing out. So if you look that as an example of resetting of situation, so this is that thing. We are resetting the way socially interact, commercially interact. So yeah, I mean, we'll see some changes. I can't predict all, but possibly there would be some of those things.
Anyone else?
Oh, I think so. I think there is going to be a lot of shifts. So what's going to be the end result, sort of looking at the total GDP, is really hard to predict, because I think ultimately once people start spending less on fast fashion, because I do think similarly to Tomasz that this is going to change now, but then the same purchasing power is probably going to go somewhere else, and maybe not towards other products, hopefully from the global warming and ecology perspective. But if not in the products, then services or experiences. So I don't believe that people will just completely shut down and stay at home and live on bread and butter and Netflix. It's just that there's going to be a substitution. So hopefully that's going to be more environmental friendly and less consumption driven substitution. So I personally would expect that casual clothes, for example, or sports clothes is going to pick up. So just looking at my friends, I see some the online yoga or stretching classes are now much more a thing. So those type of experiences, and then the products that are driven by that. I imagine some yoga mats, that's the category now. So huge shift, I'm certain, ahead of us, but I don't have the crystal ball to tell what's gonna stay.
And as people were forced to cook more by themselves, they might stick to be more culinary attracted, and maybe more respect for good food and better ingredients. Hopefully,
I absolutely agree with you. I've cut my finger twice. Trying to be smart about it.
Me as well.
This topic is very, very funny. I just invested in a company which is organizing a live cooking session for your friends with really great chefs which are out of work right now. So you can, cook something with your friends online, and this is just a great idea. So I think we will see a lot of, this kind of new, very valuable ideas how to spend time online with your friends, and so absolutely there will be some positive changes, right? Maybe we'll be a little bit wiser after that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you all, but I think there's one very important point here, which is decentralization, right? because I think we've been depending so much of China that is ridiculous, in my opinion. And that says something about our society. Like, you know, why don't we have more production in Romania or in, so for example, software in Romania, Poland, you guys are famous for that. But how about manufacturing? You know, everybody has been somewhat exploiting China, and now we are fucked. Sorry, but that's true. If China stops, then the world stops. You know, and I believe that there should be also a change in how we're going to start manufacturing stuff. So why not Brazil, Mexico? You know, start decentralizing more stuff, right? And also, and then there's an impact to fast fashion, as you're saying. So what do you guys think of it, about this decentralization as a trend?
Well, it's definitely going to happen. And I think the second driver, sorry to say, is robotics. Because if you think of a human, which is not a human anymore, but a robot, which then costs 2, 3, 5 years an hour, the competitive advantage of a low-cost country compared to a high-cost country is not there anymore. And an industry where that was pretty successful already is automotive, right? So automotive is using a lot of robots for producing the cars, and that's why the manufacturing of those cars stayed in Europe or stayed in other countries, and there wasn't a big need to build cars somewhere else in the world. Whereas when it comes to fashion or other items where the human had to do the work, the labor, we outsourced this to those countries. And so when robotics is getting more talent, so they can do more kind of item stuff, they can do different things that's more intelligent from a software and from a hardware perspective, and that brings down the hourly wage, so to say, of a robot, then it's definitely going to be produced around your corner again. There were some experiments where they thought that would happen more, for example, with fashion as well. Adidas was producing or printing shoes in Germany again, but it wasn't successful yet, right? So they closed that down again, or Puma, or yes, it was. And so I think it's going to happen again, and especially now, as you mentioned, this additional force that people are afraid of cutting the supply chain will definitely have an impact on people producing in Europe or in other continents.
And I think there will be also an interesting new thing we will see. So I think world will be divided again. Also, when you think about digital landscape, so we see that, you know, different countries react differently on this situation, and, you know, maybe we're united a little bit because there is like a, you know, common enemy. But every country is reacting differently. So the rebound will be different in different countries. So this could also bring a lot of new opportunities, because I think there will be lower risk of being killed by a global player. So maybe we'll see a much more space for, you know, local apps, local e-commerce brands, etc., because now, like, you know, we've heard that last year probably, right, when we heard a lot about VCs not investing in any industry where Amazon is. Like, just saying this openly, we will not invest in your startup if you compete against Amazon, right? Which is just insane, because the whole industries will lack innovation because of that. So the end of this massive globalization, which may happen, could help, and maybe we'll see even more innovation coming out of it.
And maybe let me add one thing. What I'm really scared about is how Europe reacted in this crisis, like closing down the borders and having a nationalist point of view on your problems. I think was a complete wrong answer and is a danger for Europe. So I think we can only survive and get better when the borders are down and we allow the flow of goods, and would have allowed faster, for example, help in the countries where it's needed, Italy and Spain, and it didn't happen, right? And I think this can destroy something of the culture and destroy something of the openness at the moment, and people can't see each other, although they live close by, and it feels again like we are back in the 40s of last century. And I think this is an effect of this crisis, which we all together should work on as soon as it's over, coming back to a normal, open and free Europe.
Carlos, you mute.
Thank you. We're going to the final stage of our conversation. And what are the emerging trends that you're seeing? If I could pick your brains on it, because then we are on 1 hour and 20 minutes, and then we're going to open for Q&A as well.
So I think we name a few of them. I was just thinking, is there anything I would like to add? So I think we cover almost everything, but I see, Valentin, you have another idea, right?
Yeah, I was trying to say that there's a trend. I don't know if you've noticed that work from home. Have you noticed that? It's something which is happening. We've made a survey at Omniconvert because from the 15th of May, the government will lift off this lockdown. So it's going to be okay to actually go anywhere. And we've made a survey to all our colleagues, and the answer was that 3 out of 4, they don't want to come back. So, and that's a trend, and I think we're not alone here. And most of the people that experienced the benefits of working from home after this is not going to be only the fact that it's safe, but they've just made this drive test, and now they would like to actually keep it. And another thing is that the broadcast. I mean, everyone is going to be broadcasting themselves, because while the event organizers are completely down and all the events, conferences, so we had to cancel some conferences. We have partners that canceled 40 conferences already. So I think the online events, if they will come up with a way to make people engage better with each other and to build communities that stick, that's going to also be a trend in the future.
I oppose your survey to some extent. I guess there might be some employees in our company as well, but my reaction of a lot of guys I work with, we didn't do a survey yet, was that they hate home office nowadays. They want to come back to the office. They want to meet their colleagues. They really miss the social connection to people at work, and they always asked for home office beforehand, and we had like a policy, like 1 day per 2 weeks. And nowadays they say, okay, just leave home office, I want to be back.
Yeah, but that's had to do with the curve, right? When it's okay to go, now they don't want to come back. They've said the same. Believe me, it's because it all has to do with the perception of reality, not with the reality itself. We are all living in a perception. We don't know what reality is. And once you have it, you don't want it anymore. So it's and also if you want to. I can refer to the survey from Forbes. So the famous quote, right? If I would be asking people what they wanted, I would be building faster. I would be building faster chariots or faster horses, something like that. So not cars. So one thing is what they say they want, and another thing is what they actually want. And by the way, I will see what's happening on the 18th of May because I'll be there.
I think it's going to be a mixed bag in the long run. There are people, everybody wants to get the hell out of their home these days because they want to go, blah, blah, blah. However, it will adjust itself out towards the tail end where maybe they'll be working from home for a few days. It's a new normal. It's fine. And then for a couple of days, they want to hang out with their colleagues, get out of the home. So it will be more of a hangout session. So we'll see how that thing will adjust itself. But it's not going to be as it was. There will be some changes there. I have a question before I let this great panel go. Is I am looking from the technology. We have been talking about technology. You guys see technology, you have your hand on the pulse of technology and changes. From a job description, so I'm addressing this question on behalf of people who are looking for a job in the future. Is what would be is there going to be a new job description or new variation of the existing job that will be required when we come out of this COVID thingy? And should people reskill themselves? Should they readjust themselves? Or the people who are out of the job, how should they prepare themselves for a new way of looking at jobs? So is there going to be a change in job description coming out of this COVID thing? And the key indicators of success for the job?
Always with KPIs, please.
I think what would be another positive thing is that more and more people learn how to use internet to learn new skills, reskill, and really learn something. And I think that's amazing skill we all need. So I think that's maybe not the job description of tomorrow, but for sure it's a job description of future. I can learn fast and alone, and I don't need your help to learn new things. And I think that's awesome, and probably we all know that our people, that the best people we work with are the fast learners who just solve problems, right? And I think with this, isolation and working from home, it's even more important. I've just read an interesting opinion a few days ago that if you were just a good networker and you were just bouncing, around the office, doing high fives and just being nice, the time is over for you. You have a massive problem because now we will just see what you produce actually. Right? So this could be harsh time for those guys, but a beautiful time for all those introverts who are just really good at self-learning. That's my another positive observation.
So there is one information that I've seen coming out of the city of Amsterdam here is that they are predicting, because of this COVID and readjusting of economy and all those things, a lot of people would be out of the job. So the question in front of the city of Amsterdam is, how are we going to reskill? They're asking a lot of people this question: how should we reskill a lot of people who are not very digitally connected to be ready for the next wave or whatever that is? And for those people who were digitally active, what would be the next wave of things to look at? So hard work for sure. I agree with you, Tomasz. It's the people who are faking it, I think it's going to get very, very clear. So it's a whole different situation for them. Valentin, you were saying something.
Yeah, I wanted to say at that point that this we've seen a lot of employees that were over demanding. So it was a balance. It was an unbalance between the demands of the employees as you couldn't find too many people. And nowadays we are seeing this getting much more balanced. So companies will be able to handpick the best people out there, because the telecom operators, Airbnb, whatever, a lot of companies are letting valuable people go as well. And I think from your question around the job description or the jobs themselves or how to retrain themselves, I'm always looking at that Japanese matrix to understand where you should go. So you have these 4 circles, right? What do I want to do? So what's pleasing me, what's needed on the market, and that means you should do some research because the needs are now reprioritizing themselves. What's getting me paid enough, so how much do I want to get paid, and also what's fulfilling me. So I think this let's say this situation will show something about the character of also the employers and also the employees. Because if you want to do compromises just to be paid, I think that's not going to work on the long term. I'm not saying, okay, stay out of the job and don't feed your family because your path is to be a pianist or something like that. But what I'm stating here is that we don't have to do too many compromises. If that's our North Star, we should continue to follow that North Star, but to stay also connected into to make the reality check. And another important thing that I suggest, I've seen this on LinkedIn, I'm really active over there, and I'm seeing a lot of valuable people which are having some poor jobs, but they are valuable characters and they have outstanding posts about economy and whatever, but they are working somewhere in the hierarchy very, very low. So I think the network effect is something that they need to take into account. So we just need to go out there and to create content. We need to because that is that saying, your network is your net worth, right? So there are a lot of opportunities, but if we wait for someone to give us the great job, that's not going to happen. So if you have a cause, go out there, produce content, get your word out about what you believe in, and I think some opportunities will follow.
Awesome.
I think there are some questions from Romeo to Thomas. Carlos, I'm not going to steal your job.
Yeah, sure. So, okay, guys, I think we're going to wrap this up and we're going to open up for Q&A now. As promised, let me see. I'll scroll up. Even though the ad prices are lower right now, this is not going to be forever. The ad prices are going back as they were, or even greater. Therefore, if you focus right now on ads to bring new customers and grow, that is only a short-term solution. That will not be sustainable long-term. Okay, that is an affirmation. So the relationship with the fashion market seems to have profound changes. I would like to know if you agree that there will be a shift in the division from the larger market share to the digital market. If this is reasonable, what is the best attitude for small entrepreneurs to start digital inclusion? That's a good question. Please, you're welcome to give your wisdom. Should I repeat the question?
I can answer to that, Carlos. I've got the answer, the question. I don't know if I have the answer, but we'll see that. Yeah. So for small entrepreneurs in the fashion industry, that was of course the digital market share. Even today, I've seen some numbers from Fashion Days, which is the largest player in the fashion industry in Eastern Europe. And they've stated that they've doubled their sales in the last month, and they are forecasting that the penetration in the fashion is going to be 20% until the end of this year. So it's clear that the fashion industry will be, the digital players in the fashion industry will be positively affected by that. In terms of strategies to tap into this new demand or to thrive on this trend, I think an underrated strategy is blue ocean strategy. There are a lot of ways to position yourself. And if you are selling the same goods as everyone, let's say you are selling Converse or you are selling Nike or whatever you are selling, you are one of the 25 or 250 stores that are offering Nike, all you can do in order to differentiate yourself is to have a different voice, because your product is the same. So the experience plus the product equals what's your e-commerce offering. And my suggestion would be to find out ways to differentiate. If you can't differentiate by I don't know, selling your own products, private labels, without, if you can't do that, what you can do is to actually differentiate by having a different voice in the total mess that is happening. So this is a moment where consumers are trapped to their homes. The social media is to the roof. The usage of social media is over there. And if you find ways, creative ways to position yourself and what you're selling, I think you're on the right path. And another suggestion would be to do research. There are a lot of companies that are guessing that their customers would like this, or the other, and they are just following what Amazon is doing, what the big players are doing, what ASOS is doing. So maybe this is a good opportunity to actually talk with real customers, to do customer interviews, and to understand what are the triggers that make them buy, and then craft a positioning that is different, instead of just blasting discounts and promotions over there, because that's what's everyone is doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Valentin. Anyone else on that? No? Perfect. There's a question here for Thomas from Romeo. So Thomas, Karwartka, how do you see companies like your software houses changing in terms of mental health of employees and acquiring new customers? That's the first one. And I think that's an interesting topic to discuss, as actually mental health in general. It's been trending over the past year. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge here is maybe we have two challenges. One challenge is like it's very easy to switch tech company as Divante to remote only. It's very easy at the beginning, and then it's harder and harder with every second day, with every coming day, because you know, those companies, you employ a lot of smart people. Those people are in the company because there's a lot of other smart people. So it's like in school back then. You like to go to school to meet friends, right? And the school itself is just an add-on to your friends. And meeting with friends is the essence. It's the fun part. So you need to somehow emulate that online without decreasing the efficiency of the company itself. So I think this is all ahead of us. But what's very positive, we built our own products, and our products are open source. And with open source, you are remote first from the beginning, right? Because we have one product where like 3,000 developers are involved, and all those people work remotely, and you build motivation, which is quite high, because those people, you know, use their own time for free to build something with us. So I think we can learn a lot from open source projects. The biggest one, probably Red Hat, something like this. We can understand how remote companies work for years, and that would be very interesting. So that's the one challenge, the work itself and keeping the positive vibe. The second thing is, this is what I believe, Valentin, you addressed that. So the circumstances change, and now it's not as comfortable as it was before. And a lot of people, especially in IT companies, are very young people. They haven't seen anything than, you know, a growing market, right? So I think for a lot of them, it's very stressful time now. They see the friends are losing job. it's harder and harder to find another job. So I think this is also the stress level we need to address somehow. I don't know what we'll do, but for sure it's an interesting challenge, right? I'm also interested in your opinions, as you know, we're all entrepreneurs here.
Perfect. Let me see. Yeah, there's another question. In e-commerce, what do you think are the advantages of countries like Poland, Czech Republic, Romania, and Hungary?
For Czech Republic, it's beer, definitely.
Sure. It's pretty good.
So I like, from my perspective, I think like for sure there is something in this globalization which will disappear a little bit. So again, large countries in Europe are very interesting markets. So Poland is quite large, Germany, of course, France, a lot of countries that probably there will be new local players there. And if you are in this country, you can start and build quite successful brand and be there quite safe for coming years, I think.
And I mean, just to add on that, I think the huge advantage of CEE is basically the fact that we're actually quite close physically to the Western European markets, and still the cost advantage is quite significant. So if you're an entrepreneur from any of those countries, and if you have a great product, I think there is just no reason to limit yourself to your domestic market. And you can compete in Germany, France, Benelux, you know, all of those big markets, which will give you a multiplier of 10, 20x in terms of addressable market. And yeah, so actually quite a few examples of companies who basically have great products, sometimes even manufactured in one of those countries, that's high quality and very cost attractive. So I think that's a big advantage.
More questions from the audience? Come on, guys and girls, so I'm not labeled as misogynist afterwards. Questions? Let's enjoy.
Come on, they're exhausted.
Yeah.
2 hours with us. Come on, it's crazy. We should pay them.
And by the way, I would assume it's already a Zoom call number 8 today.
Yeah.
So
how do you guys deal with the? I feel drained, to be honest. I feel it's very, very draining to have the Zoom calls. Do you feel the same?
Exhausted.
Jesus, it's like
that's why I don't believe. I think Tomasz's remarks were very interesting, because like on the surface, when you look at the LinkedIn, it seems all the tech companies are hooray for the remote work. And like our experience is again, I think it's going to open us up to do more of the home office than we used to. We always had home office, but taking a little bit more of it. But at the end of the day, you're just exhausted after a full day of Zooms. And if it's a like day of interactions at the office, it's actually just giving you energy, right? Just, you know, a few meetings in the conference room, then like an ad hoc next to the desk. It's fun. And with Zoom, it's Zoom fatigue.
Indeed, it's crazy.
Like running a communication platform. You are chatting on WhatsApp, and you are doing something on Slack, and you are something on Team. Because depending what you do, you're talking to different customers. Yeah, so you're right. It's a digital exhaustion.
Cool. But then let's give us some relief.
All right, guys. Hey, I want to thank you from my side. It was very nice talking to you, chaps, and I hope we can stay connected.
Well, maybe we meet in real time or in the real world one day.
Who knows?
We will for sure. Fingers crossed, right? So,
Pleasure.
guys, thank Martin in Brazil, South America. Last question. There's one last question. I know you're drained. Marketing with Brazil, South America, Africa should be new options. Would you mind explaining what do you mean, Eduardo? Nope. Okay. Just email me that question and then I will address and then we'll find out. So, gents, thank you very much for this. I think it's been awesome, very nice. I admire each and every one of you. So thank you very much. Tomek is out. So
Thank you, guys.
And good luck to you, buddy. This is pretty good initiative, Evolve. Let's evolve together.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you. Thank you all, guys.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All the best, guys.